All right, welcome back to Mjbizcon 2022. Dimitri Downing, we're here with my co-host with the most.
Luna Stour from iSpire, Chief Impact Officer in the house.
iSpire is this giant thing you see behind us.
Yes.
Much love for iSpire for hosting us today so that we could interview some of the important thinkers, advocates, brands in the cannabis industry, get some information out there to the world about how the industry works, who's who, and whatnot. So iSpire, again, shout out to you guys, because without you, this kind of stuff doesn't happen. We're emailing all of these out next week, so people will get the inside scoop about what's happening in the cannabis
industry. And thank you to the Marijuana Industry Trade Association of Arizona and all the work you're doing right there to make it work.
We do networking, we do business development, we do education, a lot of other things, so we really appreciate you. So right now, I am pleased to be joined by Kenny and Rick, two important figures in the cannabis industry, I'll say the global cannabis industry, who have an association with one of my favorite organizations, Last Prisoners Project.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, and have quite a journey to tell. You know, where do you begin? Where do you begin to tell this story? And Rick, Kenny, which one do you guys prefer to go first?
You know, it's difficult. I'll start.
Yeah, let's just walk through it.
So my uncle was sentenced to 98 years in prison when I was 11 years old.
And this is Rick, by the way.
It's Richard here. My uncle, your uncle.
'85, '86.
Yeah, just
yeah.
That's so you.
So I was a young kid. His son was there with him, and then
Right.
I went to visit. So subsequently, I didn't know my dad, right? Like, long story short,
Right.
him and my dad were friends. I won't go any further than that as kids, right? And my dad married his mom, and I came out of it. My parents divorced before I could even remember my life, anything. You know, I don't have no memory of that. I didn't know my dad until this happened. So my dad saw the article and got back in touch with him. They rekindled their relationship, and I went to visit my dad for the summer, and he got arrested that summer, so I never went home.
So you got arrested in the summer of '86 or '85?
Actually, 88.
Oh, 88. So
Summer
I got
of
my
88.
years wrong. Yeah, I got my
88.
years wrong.
I was 4 years old.
I have my
Summer
years
88.
wrong. I'm sorry.
But we're going to get into why he cannot forget the time in a second. So what happened in the summer of '88?
When I got arrested?
Yes.
A friend of mine that owed me some money kept telling me, don't worry, he's coming soon, da-da-da-da, and he wound up, he was working with the FDLE in Florida, and they were just trying to set me up.
Narc.
Because they thought I was doing something, which I wasn't. I was in legitimate business, and I wasn't messing around, because one time in prison was enough for me, you know. I didn't like the idea of not being able to move around, you know. So I wasn't about to go back into the thing, and make a long story short, you know what a reverse sting is, right?
The what?
A reverse sting?
A reverse sting, yeah.
Yeah, that's when the police set you up.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me.
I was an ex-prosecutor, I'm mostly domestic violence prosecutor, though. About 85% of my casework is domestic violence. So there was a reverse sting, and this is one of the reasons why I love this industry. It's because, 10 years in this industry now, after prosecuting for 12 years and leaving prosecution because it kind of sucks, did economic development. But now this is like it gives me a wonderful opportunity to unravel and to explain to others who are in law enforcement how stupid the drug war was, how stupid prohibition was, how much damage was done, and check it out. And to help this industry understand that as we evolve, And as an industry, we need to avoid the drug war 2.0 and prohibition 2.0.
Yes.
And we need civil sanctions, not criminal sanctions, for inappropriate participation in the outside the
it's
tax
public
and regulated
health.
market.
It's not the new Jim Crow.
But check it out. There's a lot of business interests that are like telling legislators and stuff, well, if somebody does something illegally outside the tax and regulated cannabis market, they should go to jail.
Yeah.
And that's prohibition 2.0. That's the drug war 2.0. Let's not kid ourselves.
Well, that started in New York.
Yeah.
I mean, you see the sheriff just taking shit down. I don't know if anybody's paying attention to it.
Yeah, but
Tell
New
us.
York City sheriff just like took 30 stores in Brooklyn down 2 weeks ago.
What?
For the legacy operating dispensaries
yeah.
happening in bodegas.
I heard
and
something
things.
about
So-
that from Freaky Dog.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Rick. There was a reverse sting in 1988, and then what happened next?
Next, I was arrested, prosecuted.
What they prosecute for?
They charged me with racketeering, conspiracy to traffic, and trafficking, which is against the law to do.
Right.
You know that. They charged me with the same thing twice.
Right.
And what they did was they used, they ran them all wild. They were 30-year. The pro sentence investigation, like from the probation officer, when they did their
Pre-sentence recommendation.
right, when they did it, they told the prosecutor 12 to 17, but they
12 to
recommended 12,
Right?
and they wound up giving me 330s running wild,
330-year.
sentences running wild, and then,
Plus.
and then 30, and then 8 years on top of that.
Now the judge and the prosecutor recommended that, or how that?
The prosecutor
Can you imagine if he was black?
and the judge went along with it.
He wouldn't be out.
And this
No,
is in
right, that part.
1988.
Yep.
And for those, wow. For
The
those
height of
just-
Reagan's drug war.
Was this?
They're making examples but deterrence as a concept doesn't really work. No one's ever not sold drugs because they know that it's illegal to do it. It's the whole premise logically. It just doesn't make sense. Like you said, it's just it's stupid policy.
Yeah.
Help me out here. Was it a
Lose-lose.
U.S. attorney or was it a county level in Florida?
County.
County.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
So now you're doing state time. You're doing 30 years.
First, I had to do the first mandatory 3
Right.
before I
Yeah.
got any gain time on
Because of the
30.
mandatory minimum sentencing. Even if the
Right.
judge wanted to be lenient, they legally
Right.
couldn't.
So what I had to do was I had to do 3 without a 1 day gain time, and then my sentence started to run. When I went in, it was 65%. Now it's 85%.
Wow.
So
crazy.
it was kind of a.
There was no violence involved. No,
There's no violence involved anywhere on my record.
no guns involved.
No.
And I want to make that
Look at
clear
this
for
guy.
people.
He's a sweetheart.
No, but people out there are
Yes,
wondering.
there was no actual-
This is the insanity. This is the disappointment of Biden as well, because he should have done something. He can easily tomorrow do what he did for the little misdemeanors as like a symbolic gesture. But
Right,
he
because
didn't.
he's the one that wrote this bad policy.
He's the one that should do it.
Yeah.
Right. He
And
should
he's the
undo
one-
his doing.
He's the one that should tell the states to do it.
Yes.
And to do it now.
Okay.
And he should change the law. He should.
We should keep his
take it-
promise. He should keep his
Right.
promise that
Right,
caused
that's what
his
he should
community
do.
to vote for him.
Yep.
That's a lot of people only voted because he said he was
100%.
going to do this.
Well,
the only reason he's in office is because of pot smokers.
Right. People utilize us and,
It
and,
was-
and use us to leverage a cultural nostalgia, and then they don't come through
You know
because
what a
it's
lot
unpopular.
of people don't realize? That he wouldn't have been our president right now if it wasn't for the pot smokers in this country.
We vote, actually.
That voted for him.
Yep.
We voted for him.
We come out.
Yeah, well, if
Because he made promises while he was running that he was going to make it legal and crush everybody's record.
Right.
And he didn't do that.
It's a constitutional issue. This is a human rights abuse issue.
And that's the reason that me and Steve D'Angelo were in Washington 2 weeks ago
Like,
protesting.
Nice. How'd that go?
Shout out to Steve
Went quite
D'Angelo.
good.
Pick up Last
Shout
Prisoners
out to
Project.
Steve. We love you, Steve.
What up, Mary?
Tip of the hat, Steve. So let's before we get into your advocacy, what you're doing now. When did you get out and how?
I got out almost 2 years ago in about I guess 20 days. It'd be 2 years.
Mazel tov.
Yeah, it's almost 2 years. Yes.
So 20.
Free them all. Free all nonviolent drug offenders.
88.
Yesterday.
98, 2008. 2018. 2020. So you did 32 years.
32 counts.
And watched it get legalized from inside. That's the whole.
Well,
That's
one
the,
thing I'd like to point out at this statement, and 32 years straight, but he had served his time for the previous crime, which was 5 years.
Right.
So it's 37 years of his life
Thank you.
in jail for
Right.
this.
And then probation is a whole nother shtick. Because you got to keep,
For being involved
reporting in.
a substance that now is clearly legal. I mean, still kind
It's
of illegal.
insult to
obviously.
injury. I can't even imagine for people who are still sitting
It's
inside.
just crazy. I mean,
Do you know how nice it was, 4/20 of this year, for the media to see me, Richard DeLisi, the Italian guy from New York, that they made me up to be like I was a gangster. Meanwhile,
gangster.
I've been a hipster all my life.
Right.
You know, since I was 13.
Right.
All right. I started smoking pot when I was 13. And
Who didn't?
11 over here.
And they still couldn't take it away.
Right. Well, because it's within us. It's that we have an endocannabinoid system that we've been developing with and evolving with for thousands of years. This is our birthright. Asslinger, I say Asslinger on purpose, in 1937 just created this narrative and this prohibition propaganda. It's so new in our consciousness. Our body tells us it's ours. We get it in breast milk. Cannabinoids are in the first thing that you breathe in or drink in.
You know, it still puzzles me how this could have occurred. And I mean, it did. It happened. But it is still like a sense of awe. Like, wow. You know
what's wow? That we are actually sitting here talking about it right now. And 2 years ago, I was in a cell no bigger than this area that we're sitting in right now.
With another dude.
In a maximum security prison. And by the way, all 32 years of my life that I spent in prison was in a maximum security prison.
Why did they do that?
Because they associate drugs with character, unfortunately.
Why did they do that?
They did that because I was Italian and I was from Brooklyn.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I've watched some Godfather movies.
And it was a second offense, maybe. I don't know. And I'll point out a very small period of time in a state government-controlled facility, and the rest of the time, I'll call it out, in modern-day plantation slaveholders, a private prison.
Right.
It's a whole different subject. We won't touch too much into that, but the private prison is a bigger problem. Where is the incentive for rehabilitation when there's a profit margin attached to the individual being incarcerated?
Right.
Let's go back to just some moments in time. So you're in jail and you have hope?
I always had hope. There wasn't 1 second that went by in a day. I would make up a motion in the library and file it as soon as I got to prison. It didn't take me but I think a month to figure out how to get around the place and get into the legal library.
The library, yeah.
Once I figured that out, it took a couple of Sweetie Golds and honey buns and stuff like that, for the
Cigarette.
guys.
Currency.
So when I walked up, I could walk right in and do what I had to do.
Beautiful.
There wasn't one time in 32 years that there wasn't a motion in court with my name on it. In other words, I would file a motion, and then I would start filing a motion if they were going to stop that motion. If they were going to deny that motion, I had another motion put right on top of it that was getting filed the same day that they denied it.
How old were you when you went in?
I was, I think 38, right? 38.
That's how old I am right now.
38?
Yeah,
And
38,
so
39.
now
Wow.
you're 38, 40, 50, you're like 60 something.
Now I'm 74.
74. And just, so the 38 to 72, they
Unbelievable.
took, that is just shocking. I admire the fact that you're sitting here with such, a smile on your face.
That's what's so crazy about it.
Yeah.
The human spirit, and you know that the plant is
You
the
just-
truth.
I know it.
The power-
I've known that since I was 13.
Radical righteousness.
There are so many great myths and Roman myths written about the tragically imprisoned. There's stuff in the Bible about it. Did that help you get through? I mean, did you read about that stuff? And,
If it wasn't for him,
yeah,
that man upstairs,
yeah.
I wouldn't be here talking to you right now.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can feel it there. You know, it actually gives me hope that there is some sort of universal justice, some sort of like proactiveness.
I came like a hair of dying 3 times in prison. I'm talking about a hair of dying. I had COVID when it first hit the United States.
Ooh.
Right.
My friend upstairs, 50 years old, that was a muscle guy, got it the same day as me, and the next day he was dead. So you can imagine what I went through for 14 days. I went to medical when I lost my taste and my smell, and they gave me 2 aspirins.
And sent you back to your cell where you're sleeping within a foot of someone else.
Yep.
And if it wasn't
This
for
is
my,
why it was rampaging.
and if it wasn't for my roommate,
Shout out Sean Bass.
Sean Bass, which I'm shouting out, brother. You know I love you, man. He's probably at my house now checking, making sure it's
Yes, sir.
okay. He saved my life. And then I saved his. Because he got it right after me.
Brotherhood.
So, Last Prisoners Project, they got involved. How did you get out?
Here's what happened. My son is friends with a guy called Champelli.
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 Shout out to Champelli.
Yes.
Joseph, what's up, my brother? And he shouted out to Champelli, which they're like brothers. And Champelli had told him about this guy, Steve D'Angelo, that he was getting this thing going on to get people that were in prison for cannabis out. So, I mean...
And Rick, to back up, Rick has been in the legacy cannabis industry, very deep connection to the Bay Area, obviously with Champelli being with him. Rick, his son, is in Amsterdam, lived there for 28 years. So there's a lot that we didn't cover in those little pieces. But
Oh,
yeah,
through
go
the
back
70s
here.
and 80s.
Yeah, so he's lived there since the 90s in Amsterdam.
Cool.
And he's coming home. What up, my brother? He's coming to Hawaii.
We call it Oaksterdam.
Oaksterdam, yeah.
So D'Angelo gets involved.
Shout out, Rich. I love you. D'Angelo, my friend gets in touch with Champelli gets in touch with D'Angelo. And D'Angelo says, yeah, that sounds like a good deal. He hasn't gotten anybody out of prison yet.
He's an Italian guy from the East Coast, too.
Yeah, he is. He's a goomba for sure. So, before I know it, I get called out to classifications, and they're telling me that they made a mistake in my game time and all kinds of stuff's going on, right? But meanwhile, the lawyers from Last Prisoners Project, one of them is in touch with me already.
Right.
So I know what they're fixing to tell me at classification is a complete fabricated deal, which it was.
Liars.
When you're in prison, you know the minute you're getting out.
Right.
They were telling me you didn't realize that we didn't give you the skate time. Please. You know what I mean? So Champelli got in touch with Steve. Steve got a couple of lawyers. I started talking back and forth. It happened so rapidly. Well,
because you take one look at your case and it's got holes in it
Well,
up the wazoo.
it was, I don't know the exact timing. It was like less than 45 days.
That's pretty fast.
So what happened was, Rick, his son, and I was in the Middle East, longer story, but Rick and I had hired an attorney that wrote the early medical release program for COVID for the Department of Corrections in Florida. So
Wow.
a friend of mine that's a lobbyist, shout her out, leave her unnamed purposefully, but she's like, hey, you got to get in touch with this particular guy right here. He's writing this thing and getting people out of jail. We hired him as a consultation, and he gave us his fee and told us, hey, he was crying. He had just lost his dad. He said, if I were you guys, I would not hire me because it would be a bad perception to the people that have to make that decision. They'll see it as a drug smuggler with a lobbyist, like in a weird way. He said, you have to tell your story and get their human attachment to
Hearts
it.
and minds.
And he's like, I just lost my dad. He told Rick, I just lost my dad, so I would do exactly this. We're starting to put the money together to get the package. We started to work to get the money together. And he calls Rick and says that the lawyers are talking to him and shit. And we're like, he says it's, nice, wonderful girl. And I was like, we were hiring like a fat old Republican ball guy from Tallahassee, so it wasn't jiving. And then Rick said his other son, David, called him and said, "Did you check your dad's release date?" It said 6 months. And at that point, we have a Department of Corrections website we could go to get updates on your family member. That's your lifeline. You see a picture,
Yep.
an updated picture,
that
maybe
site.
some kind of like whatever update. You just go on there every so often when you miss them, and you know, somehow it comes up. Like, you know, you search the news, you go through it, and David sent that to Rick, and it was like saying 6 months, which meant, because we know the game time shit too, which meant, wow, he's getting out like tomorrow, like with this thing, which Rick, his son, called Tallahassee, which, believe me, we've done that over the 32 years. And the guy that's in charge of the Department of Correction, game time and all that, was super responsive. Like he was trying to sell us something. And we had, you know, a small window of time. And he was communicating with Rick and told him he's coming home in like a month. And I was in Abu Dhabi at the time, and Rick called me and was like, "Bro, you got to come back. Pops is coming home." I said, "When?" He's like, "Fucking next week." I was like, holy fucking shit. I could almost cry saying it the way I felt. And the rest is like a whole different story. But it was 35 days. It got on the news, got on another news, and I think they start to see embarrassment. And they're like, shut that up down there.
Yep,
because they're showing noise to our system over there in the Everglades. Like,
You know, it's interesting, and I don't want to take too much away because I want to get deeper into your story and what you're doing now. But, you know, I prosecuted for 12 years. I dealt with all kinds of crimes, financial crimes, sexual crimes, all transportation crimes, mostly domestic violence. But I knew very well the entire time that, and most prosecutors, they don't think about the art of justice. You know, they just find if somebody responsible or not
the
responsible.
art of justice.
No,
the spirit of justice.
Is somebody responsible or not responsible for committing a crime? Fine, that's easy. You figure that out. It is what it is most of the time. So, but not one prosecutor, not one probation officer, not one judge has any absolute knowledge on what the truth of sentencing is.
No.
Whether it's 1 day, 6 months, 360 days, 15 years, capital punishment, $1,000 million fine. It's all horseshit. It's all an art.
Arbitrary.
It's all an art. But the power that you have over people's lives and their liberty is just insane. And not enough people reflect on that. You know, like, I mean, there could have been like a little regulatory thing, boom, smack on the hand, go on with life. Just don't do it again. But it's just an art that we're practicing, and we have such faith in the American justice system, like it really is like the best justice system in the world. But I was sitting there, and we were just pulling shit out of thin air.
yeah.
And these prosecutors run around like, oh no, this guy deserves 5 years. Says who?
Yeah.
And who is going to know what's going to happen in those 5 years? Rehabilitation day one, rehabilitation after 5 years, never rehabilitation.
Also, 5 years for a 75-year-old versus 5 years for a 20-year-old who has a newborn baby. That's the other thing is 5 years it's a qualitative and a quantitative thing. It's like you can't even apply. Time space continuum is a made-up thing anyway. What's 5 years of someone's life if it's during their child's birth, you know?
It's not 5 years of their life.
It's everyone's lives too.
Let's just break this down a little bit. I was one person. Do you know how many people I affected when I went to jail? Probably 100.
The ripple effect is so real.
Probably 100. 100 people connected right to me.
And then add to that all the people that are created during that 32 years that are affected as well.
Right. And then also there's the trauma because just because you're out, you'll never, I mean, you were a prisoner of war, literally. You're a POW.
Oh, no doubt.
What's your license plate?
POW 420.
You want to hear something crazy about
That's
420?
good.
I know people were, you know, we like this thing, and it comes to us. And he's get him out, goes right to get his license. He got to get his license the day he's out.
Yep.
Shout out to Bud Doc for showing up and
Bud Doc hooks it up.
And getting him licensed for his weed right away because he was like, he's got to be legal. This guy drove all the way down that we didn't really know him
You
well.
got a little bit of access to weed in prison? A little bit?
Yes, I was going to ask that too if you miss smoking, but you never know.
It's no different than the street.
Well, one thing I will say is
It's just much smaller.
Right.
yeah.
So 420, you were starting
So
to say.
420, so he goes to get his driver's license, and when we're all with him, you know, like third day you're out of jail, like
About a week.
about a week, like, you know, really quick, like, you know, because I got to get the license. We're like, not yet, slow down. We got driver, we got car. And he goes in to get his license. We're like, they're not going to give you your license. You're going to have to do an eye test. I said, I just had to redo my license. I had to redo my whole driving thing.
The whole
Because I
ringer.
let it expire. He goes in there, and they renew his license for him. Shout out to the DMV, you know.
Never thought I'd say that. Shout out to the DMV.
Well, let's call it D.C., Maryland, Virginia.
Nice.
And he comes out with his license, and he's like, they gave it to me. And his license number is like DL-420.
No.
And I was like, how did he get that? That was his license number in 1960. What did you get your license?
No.
67.
Oh God, that's hysterical. That's too good, you guys.
And he lives at an address. I won't give the street, but his address is 420 right now.
You guys. The plant chose you to do this work. I'm so sorry that the universe knew you were strong enough to carry this burden. It's a lot that you're doing, and we really are standing on your shoulders. Thank you for being so strong.
Thank you.
Which leads to one of the most important things, because we are at Mjbizcon, and we love interviewing people that are using the business of cannabis to also continue to do the good work. You know, like Vicente Siedenberg. You know, he's an advocate who found his way into the cannabis industry, and now his success is the advancement of the community and the freedom of the plant in general, et cetera. So you guys have started a brand.
Yes, we started a brand. We started DeLisioso.
DeLisioso.
Show them your tattoo.
DeLisioso.
Hold up your tat. Hey.
DeLisioso.
Which is delicious in both Spanish and Italian.
So,
Yes.
so you people should know, and we can talk a little bit about the brand, what it is, where it is, and where you're going with it. But the most important takeaway is when you support this brand, you guys will continue to use that, the rewards that you gain from the success of the brand, to continue to support groups like the Last Prisoner Project and all the other good work that still needs to be done, because you guys have
anybody that I sign up with to make money with in this business, when we sign up with them, this has got to be put in the contract.
Yep.
Yeah, and we you know, a lot of people know our story. Well, a lot of people know our story. We walked away from some pretty lucrative deals.
Right.
Some pretty amazing deals we just said no to.
Because they didn't want to donate to where
right,
I wanted it to go.
That's okay.
So right now,
they can find somewhere else.
Yeah, we found some people.
There's
and
enough people in our space.
Like, for example, we're coming up on something really, we're coming up on the end of our year, and we're going to get a lump of money. Now, there's still some consideration of maybe we'd have made more money if they didn't make that deal.
Not the point.
You know what I
You
mean?
bake
But
it into the
we have
bottom
this
line.
money, it's baked into it.
Yep.
And now, at the end of this year, we're going to be giving a lot of money to Last Prisoners Project.
Right.
Like, you know, the beginning of this year, we're trying to, you know, there's other organizations as well.
Too.
This one is for us, like really like their family. You know, Mary.
And the commissary
and they got
piece
us
too
out.
is
And
such
shout out to Mary.
direct.
Yeah,
you
so
know?
I just want to say, because they give commissary, they do the
That's
letter writing.
so direct. They literally need that to like
and-
eat and have hygiene.
And a lot of people give these
Sorry, I got a bad
organizations shit, and you know, I hate to say it, don't do it. Like, just like learn everything first. I don't want to get into the politics, but the bottom line is, it means a lot to our entire family. And imagine how many people are out now, 25 plus, whatever. It takes a lot to do this, I guess.
And
what I'm saying.
reintegration too is a big piece too. Getting
Yeah.
them out is just the first step of so
Yeah,
many.
and-
How are they being?
Yeah, and
what
then,
services
you know, look,
are they getting? What
have
support?
people. Shout out to
Small-
Stephanie, because she's working there, and she's like, so you'll see, like Randy Lanier, like a lot of these prisoners, and a lot of people are always shocked with him. Like, how the fuck do you spend 32 years in jail and then you're out there constantly just advocating, not living his
Because he
life?
was putting in motions every week on the week and didn't
Well, and
stop.
this is it. So it's like an educational thing, and we're continually educating people that there's a couple organizations that you definitely support. Most consumers that we run into, patients, whatever you want to call them, they're not really, when we start the story, because you ask them, how do you start the story? When we start the story, he's the longest serving nonviolent, they're like, okay, wow.
Respect.
But if you say, hey, he was, you know, he smuggled 500,000 pounds of marijuana into the country in the 70s and the 80s and got set up, then it's like a more, so we found ways.
Sexy.
Let's give a quick shout out for Freedom Grow too.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Freedom Grow.
Yeah, Freedom Grow and Randy Lanier. Like, I was watching Randy in Mount Dora last weekend, you know, setting up a booth by himself for Freedom Grow, hanging banners with all of the prisoners' pictures and their stories, handing things out, having petitions signed for no money. Drove 5 hours round trip. You know, so that's the type of advocacy that
Where
we
can
support.
people find you guys? Because we have to wrap up. We're on a tight schedule.
Oh, look
where
at her
can
taking
people
charge.
support you guys?
was the first time she's done
DeLisioso, DeLisioso.
Okay.
And then this guy right here is Free DeLisi now, FreeDelisi. And that's where you can find out about our whole story. Facebook.com.
So where real quickly, DeLisioso, how do you pronounce it exactly?
DeLisioso.
DeLisioso.
Yeah, you got it.
DeLisioso.
He's even got the Italian hand. That's the whole thing.
DeLisioso.
Yeah.
You got to shake your joints.
Yeah.
What states are you in so far?
So right now we're operating in the medical program in Florida. We're available in the True Leaf stores, 123 outlets across the state.
Congrats.
Pre-rolls, whole flour, live rosin, super
You're
high
operating
quality.
True Leaf in Florida?
Yeah, we're operating as a brand partner under their umbrella.
Do
Yep.
they have the rights to your brands in other states?
We have
First right
a
of-
non-exclusive first right of. We have a we right now.
Because
yes.
people are going to want to partner with you guys. People are going to see this and
Yeah.
say, how do I get them on my shelves? Can I do a licensing?
Yeah, we certainly
thing?
are open to collaborations.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to be again. He's got the final say, and it's basically, we want to step up to the plate for the it's
Yeah.
a tragic situation.
Yes.
Thousands of people have been arrested for weed this year that have a license in a medical state. For
Unbelievable.
Because they didn't have a container.
Okay, so this is what we're going to do because we got to go.
One more shout out. Shout out to Steve D'Angelo, Mary Bailey. Thank you so much. And everybody at Last Prisoners Project. Love yous.
I think this has been one of the best Meat Unshackled that I've ever done. But we're going
Nice.
to come back and do a Canterbury Tales.
Glad we roped you guys
A
in.
Canterbury Tales episode, the Canterbury Tales.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're going to feature DeLisioso.
And you should bring him and his son because they're
Yeah.
more of the story.
No, and we're going to get
yeah.
into the nuances of the brand and why it's different, the differentiators,
Yes.
and the story, and we're going to talk about it.
And
Because-
delicioso means delicious. Our product is incredibly delicious.
Yeah, we're going to get into all that stuff on a Canterbury and Tales, but we got a little bit about your history and your background. My apologies on behalf of the American justice system. I was involved. Anyways.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Love you guys.
Thanks. Love you guys.
What an honor. iSpire is so happy to be hosting
Big
this.
up,